Hey y'all, this is Marla K. Hope everybody is doing well. Got a story that I want to share with you, and it is about the dollar as the reserve currency and how in Asia they are timing it. They're basically saying that the reserve dollar as the universal reserve currency, the days for that are numbered. And this story came out on August the 5th, 2024, so just let me share it with you. So it says current debates around the international monetary system focus on de-dollarization. Despite modest shifts to other currencies and gold, the US dollar remains dominant due to its incumbency, large share of trade and reserves, liquid capital markets, and the absence of obvious replacements. But that misses the central issue. A universal trading and reserve currency is needed because of underlying imbalances in trade and savings. So there are two ways we need to be viewing this. One, as you know, we're always going to be collateral damage, so we need to be viewing this as whenever they transition, Americans are going to be stuck holding the bag. We're going to be left with money that's worth nothing, and then the economy will collapse, and then we'll go to this digital currency system, this no buy no sell system that they've set up. The other piece of this is that they're telling us that they need to have a replacement. And to me, this is, it ties into that whole thing where the system is set up, it's already ready, they're just preparing us. And that is something that here in America, they're not talking about. Everybody else in the world is like telling the truth. Babylon is falling. Their economic system is frail. The empire is collapsing, and you don't hear anything about any of this type of stuff in America on American news. So this is why I try to bring you different perspectives so that you can see how the rest of the world is thinking and talking and looking at us, as opposed to what our media is showing us, what our social media shows us, what our what they're talking about in our communities, our local public policy, so on and so forth. Nobody is anticipating what's coming. And this is just one of many things that will be happening that we will have to navigate. So this is why it's really important for you to be praying and asking the Most High on, what you need to do with your additional resources, where we have you invest those things in tangible things that will help you during the rough times. And if you have not seen what it looks like when people's economy collapses, you should look at India. India had an economic collapse. I don't know, maybe it was last year, the year before. Venezuela, Colombia, Greece. Europe is about to have one. It's a lot of places. I think even China right now is dealing with some sort of economic decline, and they just had a situation where people couldn't get money out of the banks and ATMs. So something is happening, and when it happens, people just are distraught because you can't get money out of the ATM. You can't you can't buy anything because the cost of everything just increased. The cost of things increased significantly, and you're just kind of unprepared. Just it's almost like a brief decline in society. So you got to pray to the Most High to for guidance and discernment on what to do when these things occur. So it says where India imports more from than it exports to China. If denominated in rupees, then these Chinese have surplus Indian currency to be invested or used for purchases. If denominated in Chinese yuan, India has to finance the deficit. unless there is restricted access to investments or funding in the relevant currencies. Using an acceptable convertible third currency facilitates trade. Imbalances also reflect mercantilist policies described by Thomas Munn, a director of the East India Company in the early 1600s. The objective is to export more than you import and amass surpluses to finance control of resources and assets. Consistent with this model, and often assisted by advantageous currency rates and protectionism, many East Asian countries and Germany have historically generated trade surpluses and accumulated large reserves. And I want to talk about this a little bit because this is something that Black people have never really understood. Our fixation with name brand stuff, especially foreign expensive name brand stuff, has been like the death of our economies. When we buy these things, we're buying imports, which we never really ever understood. You know, if you're buying a Louis Vuitton bag or a BMW or Mercedes Benz or whatever, like these cars are imports. These items are imports. And so when you buy those things, you're not supporting your own nation's products. When you look at other people from other nations, from other European nations, they support their own products. If you see an Asian person driving an American car, I'll give you a bridge in Brooklyn. You don't see Asian people supporting American products too fast. You know, we may eat, they may eat the food and certain little things, but when it comes to big ticket purchases, you never see, hardly ever see Asian people buying American cars. They'll buy a German car, they'll buy an Asian car maker, a car from an Asian car maker. They will buy name brand clothes from European companies. They're very meticulous about how their dollars circulate because they understand when they buy those products, they help their people at home. We do not have that loyalty. We have been very ignorant about economics, and part of it is intentional, but part of it is like we just have not really cared about having business savvy, and it's been a detriment to our people. And so, as the biggest consumers in this country, we have not done a very good job of understanding how imports and exports work and supporting our interests. We allow politicians to sign NAFTA, export our jobs. We made less, we imported more. And this happened in the 90s. So now we are at the tail end of bad trade deals, and it's going to cost us, you know, dearly. And being the poorest people in the country is like not being the poorest people collectively as a group is not a flex that you want to have. So we are going to be devastated because a lot of times we rely on these imports now, and because we don't hardly make anything in this country, it's going to be, hell to recover from. But anywho, outsourcing by advanced economies to lower cost and minimize emissions is an additional reason. Another driver of imbalances is the significant savings in surplus countries, frequently because of modest domestic consumption, import restrictions, low credit availability, and limited state social infrastructure for education, the elderly, and healthcare. For petrostates, small populations contribute to trade surpluses and excess savings. Where these amounts cannot be invested locally, they are exported through purchases of foreign assets denominated in liquid convertible currencies. Several developments are now reducing trade and saving imbalances, which will in turn diminish the need for reserve currencies. Rising barriers to trade may decrease mismatches between exports and imports. In the 2020s, an average of just 5 free trade agreements were signed each year, half that in the 2000s. In 2023, nearly 3,000 trade restrictions were imposed globally, 5 times the number in 2015. Unsustainable trade deficits, such as that of the U.S. at 3.4% of its gross domestic product, or more than $800 billion, is one factor. National sovereignty, and security concerns are another. The pandemic, transport disruptions, and wars in Ukraine and Gaza have highlighted the vulnerabilities of long transnational supply chains for food, energy, medical supplies, raw materials, chips, and armaments. This is exacerbated by anti-globalization pressures from voters marginalized by the deindustrialization of some advanced economies, and that's what happened to us. So you're seeing people push back against deindustrialization, but it's like too late. People like the cheap stuff when they were getting the cheap stuff, not realizing that, hey, you're putting your sister in another state out of work. You're putting your brother or a whole entire community out of work for a cheap shirt or a cheap TV. So here we are. Tit for tat trade wars and industrial policies, which frequently mask subsidies, are accelerating. Both U.S. presidential candidates support beggar thy neighbor protectionist policies. The U.S. Inflation Reduction Act and proposed European Union import restrictions on EV imports are evidence of these trends. Or friendshoring will persist. Sanctions and limits on technology transfer further limit activity. Global capital flows may decrease due to lower surpluses as well as increased risk to cross-border investment. There's that cross-border investment from sanctions and asset seizures, as well as a mooted U.S. tax on inbound investments. The retreat from free trade and capital flows, driven by a self-reinforcing combination of economic, political, and social pressures, is pushing the world toward autarky, closed economies with limited international trade or capital flows. And that's kind of how it was before globalization. It wasn't a whole lot of international trade. While there were some things that were being traded outside of the borders, we made most of our stuff and we used most of our stuff. We consumed what we made. And we exported stuff because we were America. But then after these trade acts and, everybody else was like, hey, y'all are getting a good deal and we're not. We want in on it too. We want to make stuff and have your people buy our stuff. So it's, a better deal. Well, that happened, but your politicians sold you out. And so now we're dealing with the fact that we don't make nothing, and everything that we need and have come to rely on over the last 30, 40 years, the majority of it comes from overseas, like, components for medication, a lot of components for cars, phones, computers, the technologies we use at work, just shoes, things that, name brand stuff that are American brands are made offshore. So we have a situation where it's really just irreversible. So it says, while only large countries or aggregations, the US and the EU and China, are self-sufficient enough to survive substantially alone, the broader trend may be toward trade blocs, and that's what you're seeing now with BRICS. Rather than geographically grouping, these may be between geopolitically like-minded and industrially complementary trading partners. For example, Russia, rich in natural resources, and China, a manufacturing powerhouse. Trade and capital flows within these groupings would be more balanced under such arrangements. Individual surpluses and deficits would multilaterally offset the bloc with the bloc, much as they do within the EU, excluding energy imports. This reduces the need for a dominant reserve currency, splintering demand into multiple currencies needed to support specific trade and investment flows. The expansion of the BRICS, redenomination of some trade, and establishment of non dollar payment systems are tentative moves in this direction. Such a shift in the global trading and monetary system would damage potential growth and living standards. So, this is what we need to pay attention to. The role of exports in driving economic activity will weaken. Moving away from the principle of comparative advantage reduces efficiency, encourages suboptimal scale production facilities, and requires large buffer inventories. It increases the cost of and reduces access to many goods and services. For emerging economies, traditional development paths reliant on trade, technology transfer, and foreign investment would be more difficult. And that's what's going to happen to us. Because as soon as we decline, nobody's going to want to fool up with us. And the things that we are accustomed to, we're not going to be able to have access to, and we won't be able to make. So it's like we'll be having a new industrialization age, or you're going to have to learn to do without a lot of stuff because the powers that be don't want us to have those things anyway, especially in America. So it says capital markets could be destabilized in the transition to a new system. And this is what I'm concerned about, and this is why I talk about this stuff. Debtor countries such as the US may find it more difficult to fund continuing budgets and trade deficits. Dollar interest rates may rise, affecting borrowers globally. Foreign exchange markets will exhibit greater volatility. For creditor countries, existing investments may lose value. Investment options may be constrained. Asian policymakers assume continuation of the dollarized status quo. Central banks and sovereign wealth funds continue business as usual, favoring U.S. investments. But trading and investment relationships require careful reappraisal and reshaping. This might entail enhancing or creating new multilateral trading blocks with more balanced trade and capital flows. New trading and investment currencies require consideration. Foreign exchange swap arrangements between central banks to finance gaps in monetary flows may be required. So anyway, it says the post-war U.S. dominated order is giving way to a more fluid and uncertain era. Adroit politics, allied to flexible economic and financial policies, are essential to navigate its risks and opportunities. So things are changing. Everybody's trying to figure it out, but it's going to happen whether we want it to or not. And again, you see how they talk about things from a big picture, national, international perspective, but they don't talk about the ground level collateral damage that will be caused by this transition. And so this is what I'm trying to prepare our people for. So this is why it's just really important for you to make sure you have things at your home that you will need for some time, things to prepare, ready your home for repairs, have a network of people that you can work with who have a vast array of skills. It's just really important to just be prepared. And then just think about all the things in your house that come from other countries that you will need if there's a transition and the dollar is no longer the universal reserve currency. So again, inflation will hit. we're going to bear the brunt of everything, and we're going to still need stuff. We're going to be alive. So you're going to need bread and water and food and whatever else. How are you going to get those things? And will you be able to afford them? What if you can only just pay your bills and you don't have any money for anything else? So those are the types of things that you need to be thinking about. As this de-dollarization ramps up and we get closer to the end, they're not going to tell us nothing. So you got to just be ready at all times for when it happens. And that's all I want for, people who follow me. Just be mindful that this is happening. People are talking about it. Nations are talking about it. And we're none the wiser. So anyway, please leave your comments below. Like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification so that you'll be notified each and every time I upload new content. Make sure that you check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because a lot of viewers are being unsubscribed by Google. If you'd like to support the channel, links are in the bottom of the description box for my Venmo and my coffee. Lastly, continue to prep, pray, seek the Most High, repent, and pray that you're found worthy to escape what's coming. Also, pray that no weapon that the adversary creates formed against us will prosper. It's up to the Most High as far as what happens to us, but we know that those of us who are in Him, He has us covered. So just keep believing, have faith, don't have any fear, but also prepare, because we have been warned about what's going to happen, and so you need to continue to prepare. All right, this is Marley K. Love y'all, and I'm out.